Hey guys, my name is Serena Reza and I served as the director, cinematographer, editor, and music producer for this project. So if something works, I'll take credit, and if it doesn't, well, we'll just call it experimental. So let's start off by answering some questions that the viewers had. First question is from Jessica, and she's asking, how does your product use or challenge conventions, and how does it represent social groups or issues? So our film follows key conventions of the crime thriller genre, including a central investigation, a detective figure, and a clear narrative enigma, in this case, Jennifer's death. However, we also intentionally challenge conventions through representation. Kimberly and Jennifer are portrayed as a lesbian couple, which directly challenges dominant media narratives that often prioritize or normalize heterosexual relationships, or at most focus on male same-sex relationships. This aligns with hegemonic theory, as we are pushing against established norms and offering an alternative representation that is still relatively underexplored in mainstream media. Visually, we incorporated pastiche, referencing Schindler's List through selective color. Initially, Jennifer appears in the first scene in a red dress against a desaturated background, which symbolizes innocence and its loss. It's subtle, but not that subtle. The goal is for the audience to feel that something is off before they fully understand why. We also applied apparatus theory through the use of camcorder and surveillance footage, positioning the audience as observers within the investigation. Essentially, the viewer becomes part detective whether they sign up for it or not. Additionally, we explored and challenged male gaze. So when we take Joan, for example, we gave her more disheveled and just unput together appearance, which contradicts the usual representation of what a beautiful female should look like. And this complicates the idea that the gaze is only male, and instead shows that perspective itself is something that can be manipulated. Next question is from Jim, and he's asking, how does your product engage with audience, and how would it be distributed as a real media text? First of all, Jim, it is a real media text. But since you asked, audience engagement in this film is driven not only through visuals but heavily through sound design, particularly the use of non-diegetic music. Instead of relying on royalty-free tracks, I chose to compose and produce the entire soundtrack myself. So in some cases, I wrote out full sheet music, performed it on piano, and then layered the recordings over specific scenes. In others, I used improv, drawing inspiration from classical compositions and film scores, allowing the music to evolve naturally alongside the narrative. Each piece was designed with intention. In the opening scene, where Jennifer is walking before her murder, I used a piano rendition of Lacrimosa. The use of minor chords and low dynamics creates an immediate sense of unease, foreshadowing the violence that follows. In contrast, the cafe scene between Tony and Jim uses a bossa nova rhythm, which introduces a lighter, almost ironic tone. While the dialogue centers around a crime, the music reflects Jim's personality and creates contrast, reminding the audience that tone can shift even within serious narratives. During investigative sequences, I use a jazz improv in a blues style, composed by yours truly, mirroring Tony's thought process, structured but slightly unpredictable. For the montage of Kimberly and Jennifer, I drew inspiration from Bram Stoker's Dracula, using a more romantic and tragic musical tone to reflect the emotional complexity of their relationship. Finally, in the confrontational scene, I composed an original piece, aggressive, fast-paced, and rhythmically intense. The use of staccato chords and rising tension aligns with Tony's physical movement, reinforcing urgency and conflict. Every musical decision functions as a technical code, guiding the audience's emotional response, reinforcing narrative shifts, and enhancing genre conventions. Because I composed and performed the soundtracks myself, I was able to align the music precisely with character arcs and story beats, creating a cohesive audio-visual experience. Next question we have is, how did your production skills develop throughout this project? This project significantly developed my production skills across multiple areas, particularly cinematography and problem solving under constraints. For example, the underwater pool scene required physically adapting the camera setup, placing the phone in a sealed bag and extending it underwater to achieve a POV shot. It was effective, but not officially recommended by any camera manufacturer. For the hallway surveillance footage, I used high-angle shots by physically elevating the camera position to replicate CCTV framing. And in tighter spaces, such as Kimberly's house, we had to get a tracking shot, like a dolly, but we didn't have a dolly. So I was in just my socks and I physically just glided through the hallways to maintain that smooth movement. Editing, I developed a stronger understanding of pacing, sequencing, and narrative clarity, ensuring that each scene contributed meaningfully to the overall structure. In terms of distribution, this project would function effectively as a streaming short film or an episodic crime drama, maybe even a YouTube short where audience engagement relies on layered storytelling and sustained tension rather than immediate resolution. Joan is asking, how did you integrate technologies, software, hardware, and online in this project? The project integrates a range of technologies across both production and post-production. Filming was conducted using accessible equipment including camcorders, mobile devices, tripods, and a lighting setup, which were adapted for specific visual effects such as underwater shots and surveillance-style footage, and also the lighting setup was used specifically for the interrogation scenes that we had. Post-production was completed using CapCut Pro, where I applied continuity editing, cross-cutting, and pacing adjustments to shape audience engagement. Sound design was developed through original composition, recorded and layered to function as non-diegetic sound, enhancing tone and emotional impact. This allowed for complete control over how each scene was experienced. Overall, the integration of technology enabled precise control over the film's technical codes, ensuring the cinematography, editing, and sound worked cohesively. One area of growth that was particularly important for me was collaboration. I typically work very independently. This project required me to adjust, not just technically but creatively, to working with a team. Film by nature is a collaborative medium, and that means learning to trust other people with your vision. At times that can feel slightly uncomfortable. Handing over creative control feels like letting strangers punch your baby in the face. However, that process ultimately strengthened the project. Allowing others to contribute ideas, performances, and interpretations added layers that I wouldn't have achieved alone. It also improved my ability to direct effectively, communicate clearly, and make decisions that balance both personal vision and group input. In the end, collaboration became less about losing control and more about refining it, understanding when to guide, when to adapt, and when to trust the process. Thank you all for coming to watch my Q&A and learning more about the behind the scenes and the process of filming Jennifer's Gone. Thank you.